Hello there and welcome to the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry interview series. I'm Ethna Trainer and I'm going to be your host for this session. Well, we're absolutely delighted that you have joined us, and I'm just looking at the numbers here and we have hundreds of people from around the world actually. We have 43 countries registered. So this is really exciting, and I know everybody at the Chamber is really delighted that you've taken the time to be part of this conversation. The Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the interview series. Now, of course, this is a series of one-on-one interviews that the Dubai Chamber has put in place with leading local and international figures. And indeed, all international figures. There's so much that's going on here in Dubai that we want to make sure we spread the world. Really talking to people from public and from private sectors, and all of these topics, of course, relevant to business community, both locally and internationally. And our guests have a lot to talk about. So let me get started on today's session because I'm very, very excited about it. We have with us the Chief Executive Officer of the Dubai Future Foundation, but I'm going to hold on to him for just a few minutes because I have a lovely video I just want to share with you, just an example of some of the tremendous work from the Dubai Future Foundation. Let's take a look.
challenge, everybody is a leader. Where is the difficulty or challenge, some will come through. And that's just for us.
And of course, the work of the Dubai Future Foundation is every bit as vibrant and as exciting as you saw on that video. My guest today is really helping to transform business and organizations, all with the aim of contributing to Dubai's strategic and economic diversity. He has a big agenda. I'm going to get right down to business and introduce to you all. I know you're going to listen to him. He's the CEO of the Dubai Future Foundation, His Excellency Khalfan Belhoul. Thank you so much for joining us.
Ethna, thank you very much, and I'm honored and happy to be here with you. And please allow me to extend my thanks and appreciations to His Excellency Majid Saif Al-Ghrair, our dear friend and the chairman of Dubai Chambers, His Excellency Hisham Al-Shirawi, as well the vice chairman, and His Excellency Hamad Mbouamin, the president and CEO, dear friends and massive supporters of the Dubai Future Foundation, and also welcoming my other friends and colleagues from Dubai Chamber and the other guests joining us in the panel, and wishing everyone that they are all well and safe in those challenging times, and subtly and quietly recommending everyone to get their vaccines and encouraging them. I just got mine, the second dosage. I just literally got it today, right before the show. I'm feeling perfectly fine. So supporting that mandate and wishing everyone as well.
And what a great message, of hope and focus for us all. We all need to have that, because we have a very dynamic system. We have a very dynamic city here, and one that we all need to be very healthy to execute. And you definitely, when we look at the great work you have to do, and I know you have tremendous support from the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Talk to me, though, about the key sectors, the sectors that you're all looking at, the sectors that you look at in terms of why Dubai needs to, what will help it become one of the leading cities in the world, and particularly getting to grips with some of the key sectors that maybe we need to just put a little bit more effort into.
Absolutely. That's a very important question. If you allow me to maybe give it a twist, if you will, not only focusing on the key sectors, but rather looking at how we need to adapt in the sectors that will always exist in our lives, whether it's healthcare, education, banking, logistics, transport, and what has happened to those sectors through the pandemic and going forward, and also the introduction of the fourth industrial revolution and the potential introduction of new sectors. So it's a combination of being agile and embracing the change in existing core sectors, understanding the needs of the new introduced sectors, and then what do governments do in all of that, and what's our role? Because this is a big responsibility in the combination of the three, let's say, mandates, if you will. So we start with the existing sectors, if you will. Obviously, the Dubai Future Foundation has learned so much in 2020. If we look at the upside of this year, if there are any, it's obviously first of all, the disruption of technology and what has happened in people creating technological solutions for industries to progress across education, academia, e-commerce, but also understanding how we can really adapt in challenging times and leverage on technology. So through that, we've really understood through 2020 what will happen with the existing sectors, which gave us an indication that education will be completely disruptive. In the past, let's talk with an existing sector like education. In the past, and I'll talk about myself, mid-90s, graduated and went to Boston to study simply because I wanted to explore good universities. Obviously, now we're fortunate enough in the UAE, we have amazing universities, maybe less of options at that time, but with the push of leadership, obviously, we have amazing universities at the moment. But my point is, I had to physically go somewhere and go to a boundary of a school to obtain my education. Education at the moment can be a click of a button away through an Ivy League. So, but I need to emphasize something. So the access to top tier education is no longer as hard as it used to be. It can come to you using technology. You can speak to the top professors, you can communicate with them. Having said that, we understand that education is not only about the content that gets disseminated from universities and from professors. It's about your interaction, your social skills, the other qualities and the soft skills that you develop. And I give Boston a lot of credit for that, because Boston is such a diverse city like Dubai, and all you see are students. So it was so easy for me to interact with different students from different nationalities, the Africans, the Americans, the Asians. And I think that played a key role also in my upbringing, other than the actual education that I have received from Boston University. So I think education, I focus maybe on this sector, major disruption going forward, dependent on technology. E-commerce, the same. People at the moment buy online more than ever. The pandemic accelerated that as well. People right now, and I personally do that, I go to the shop and I shop. I look at the items, but sometimes I end up buying the same item from the same retailer, but through their online store. So the revenue generation for them is there, but the actual purchase, rather than carrying bags all over the mall, it becomes an experiential experience where then you do it online and order it at home, which means that there's innovation in what kind of experience you do in the brick and mortar retail experience and how you generate revenue through technology and e-commerce. Banking, again, the same thing with the introduction of blockchain and the emergence of fintech. So those are existing disrupted sectors that will always play a key role going forward, but we need to innovate and adapt in how they are provided. Now, when we come to the introduction of new sectors, or again, technology-driven, is when you talk about the artificial intelligence, what blockchain will do, 3D printing, and specifically robotics, what will robotics do to existing jobs? So we need to also embrace those technologies, and we cannot say that we need to reject them and continue working the way we can, with the way we are, because if we do that, we won't be a leading city of the future. But we're honored and fortunate to have leaders that create a lab out of our country where we're testing new ideas, which is really the vision of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, transforming the city and the country to a lab for the world, which has more than 190 nationalities coming over and testing new ideas. So maybe I took long in this point, Ethne, but I think the importance here is disrupting existing sectors, embracing new sectors and new technologies. And lastly, what do we do as government is we become extremely agile in creating the enabling environment, which is the role of the Dubai Future Foundation. And last but not least, not forget the human angle into all of this and just get swamped into what technology will bring. At the end of the day, we're humans. We interact with each other through physical interaction. Through the pandemic, this was the most major loss because we were all at home, and we really felt the value of human interaction, because as much as we worked online, rubbing shoulders and discussing on a physical basis has its own value, and it's random discussions that can create value as well.
What a very dynamic opening. Thank you so much for that. We're all very, very excited to explore what we're doing there. But I love what you talk about too, that holistic approach, and also really looking at Dubai, because in a short time too, when you think about the development of this city too, it has moved very, very rapidly, and it's moved fast. Just a quick note to our viewers out there, they can of course ask questions. We've got lots. I'm sure that people are very interested in terms of what the Future Foundation is doing. There's an area on the panel there to take your own notes, but make sure you do copy them down. And also there'll be an area for feedback. So we're really looking forward to that, because we're planning on, you know, a series of great dialogues to come. So we want you to be definitely involved. So when we look at the work of the Future Foundation too, and you talked about government and you talked about that agility too, how can government work with the private sector as well? Because ultimately you've got to bring those ideas, and without a doubt, I think you're focusing them, you're challenging and challenging, making sure that they're challenged and channeled, so to speak, to make sure that they get to the right place, because there's so many great ideas out there.
Absolutely. A very important question. But if you also allow me, you mentioned one key point, which is how things have happened in such a short period of time in the country in a very fast pace. People around the world tend to maybe underestimate this and maybe forget that this is a nation that's less than 50 years old, and that not so long ago, this nation had depended on pearl trading for its business. And not so long ago, in the discovery of oil, it was the main source of income. And if you fast forward in this short period of time, we're having this dialogue right now with the introduction of AI and genome sequencing and blockchain and the fourth industrial revolution, all in a span of 50 years. So sometimes people take that for granted, and it's an appreciation to what leadership have done in such a short period of time since the founding fathers, the late His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan and the late Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed, and the major bets they've done in a desert, basically, to build the World Trade Center and to build massive master plans to create the vision of UAE to where we are at the moment. Just a moment of appreciation of what you have mentioned over there. And with regards to the private sector, I think it's even more and more important at the moment and it's inevitable that there should be hand-in-hand work between government and the private sector. It's more important than ever. You see the importance of technologies, of the even social media, the data that's being accumulated through Facebooks and Instagrams and even other social media channels, and the value that those bring to the ecosystem. There has to be a need, there has to be some kind of a link and a synergy between the government in order for us to leverage on this data in a most beneficial way going forward. And I re-emphasize on the word data because everyone talks about how the data is the new oil at the moment. And obviously it plays a massive role because with the amount of data that's being generated by the millisecond globally, major beneficial decisions can be made. Take a simple example, even for the vaccination program and for who wants the vaccine and who needs the vaccine more than other. The more we align in our data, which is a global challenge at the moment, the more we will create better results for the globe in a positive way. So at Dubai Future Foundation, we embrace the private sector through several programs, one of which is the Dubai Future Accelerators, where we have seen thousands of startups from all over the world. And our goal in the Dubai Future Accelerators is to call out for startups very agnostically through many sectors, so health, security, education, municipality, so on, more than 13 sectors. And the idea is that we invite the private sector through entrepreneurs and startups to come in and solve for government-related challenges, which is an extreme win-win situation, because what happens here is first you create hope through the government, and you are inclusive, because it's very rare that you see governments opening up their procurement capital, which is usually safe capital deployed to big institutions, but rather opening it up to give contracts to smaller businesses with innovative ideas to, one, become more inclusive, and secondly, to create hope for startups and to build innovation within their departments. And the idea is that if the startup has a solution that can solve for a government challenge, it is given an MOU to start to test, and then it's given a contract to generate revenue. Naturally, this creates appetite to invest in the startup from venture capitalists. The more you generate revenue for the startup, the more it appreciates its value, the more there's appetite from a venture capitalist, which is an emerging asset class in the region. And we really, and in order for governments to really push for innovation and align with the fourth industrial revolution, more investment and more confidence and trust in this asset class needs to be built in order for us to align with the vision of leadership. To give even the city credit and the country, if you look at the numbers and look at all the reports from the Magnet report, which is a prominent report here that looks at the innovation ecosystem and the venture capital as a comparison to GDP and research as a comparison to GDP, it's a lovely report to look into and understand what the region is all about. You would see that we do have a lead region-wise, but are we, as a percentage comparison to a GDP, at the ratios of Israel and other countries that are known to be very keen on R&D and venture capital? As a ratio perspective, we're not there yet, but we have a regional lead, if you will, and the mandate is to raise the awareness, get the comfort from the private sector and the government to deploy into this space and build it more. So that's one partnership we have with the private sector to increase the belief in entrepreneurs and startups.
And of course, that's a partnership you have to strengthen and continually strengthen. But you can only do that when the leadership is very open and the government is actually opening to ideas and asking for ideas and appointing, something like the Dubai Future Foundation to actually make sure that this happens and that you develop this thriving ecosystem. Talk to me about how perhaps this might be able to help other governments in the region or indeed around the world, because it is about opening their eyes and ears, their arms, opening their doors, looking for new ideas, being prepared to be challenged as well. Talk to us a bit about that.
So I think that there's a very famous quote from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed in Arabic. It says, "Min al-mukhatara an la tukhatar," which is the biggest risks is not to take risks. And I think if this comes out from the leader, then this is a massive sign that we're thinking like entrepreneurs. And I think this was the recipe of success of the nation, with God's blessing to where we were and where we are, is that big bets have been taken. And those big bets come with risks. But if we do not embrace those risks and accept the risk, but mitigate it as much as we can, then we will not be leaders. So the fact that our leaders are thinking this way makes it so much easier for us as government entity responsible individuals to actually try out new things, let alone the sector that I'm involved in, which is innovation driven, which means that there will be so many new ideas, so many failure rates. But we need to embrace failure and celebrate it, because failure is considered a learning curve. And for those that have failed, they will definitely succeed going forward. So I think with that mindset, have we not made mistakes? Absolutely, we've made mistakes. Do we strive to be number one in everything? Yes, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed wants us to be number one in everything. Does this mean that we will be number one in everything? Maybe not. But if we strive with that mindset to be number one in everything, and we'll definitely learn from the mistakes that we make in the mindset of an entrepreneur. I think those are the attributes of us setting an example for other countries to be a forward-thinking country.
Now, do you also see the role of the Dubai Future Foundation really helping to maybe influence, the development and the implementation of policies and strategies for the future? Is that part of the role?
Oh, absolutely. It's a core component, Ethne, and I'll come to the actual product that we have or we're overseeing that's related to policies and regulations. But prior to that, emphasizing on the same point, maybe the audience would typically think the typical challenge for an entrepreneur is financing, and they think there's maybe lack of investment in venture capital. Yes, that's a challenge, but it's not the biggest challenge. Confidence will be raised with time. But what we've realized from the studies and from being on the ground with entrepreneurs, the biggest bottleneck for entrepreneurs are policies and regulations. And if you have a government that can amend regulations and policies in favor of innovations, you've ticked a massive box for entrepreneurs. And with that, I'll tell you a story, Ethne. I was honored maybe a couple of months ago to take around 20 or 30 of the prominent venture capitalists of the region, the entrepreneurs, and some individuals from the academia, people the likes of the founder of Wamba, Mr. Fadi Ghandour, the founder of Beko, my dear friend as well, Danny Farha, the founder of Kareem, my dear friend Magnus as well. So entrepreneurs, academia, investors, people that believed in the story of Dubai and the UAE. We gathered around a group of 30, and we took them on a cycling trip with the Crown Prince, His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed, who is also the chairman of Board of Trustees of the Dubai Future Foundation. And the idea was just to appreciate them, and at the same time promoting health and well-being. And we went on an amazing 15K cycling tour with His Highness. And it was supposed to be casual and just for His Highness to meet them and have a talk and send a message of appreciation to them. So when we first went there and he met everyone, and this idea was also driven by my dear friend, His Excellency Hilal Al-Marri, who oversees DTCM as well and Dubai World Trade Center, an amazing driver of the innovation ecosystem here and also a partner in the Dubai Future District Initiative. So when we introduced the entrepreneurs to His Highness, I just spoke and said, Your Highness, the individuals in front of you believe in the story in Dubai and contributed in different ways than the others. He went to them and he said one sentence, and it resonated so much to them. He went to everyone and he said, ladies and gentlemen, in Dubai, anything can be changed. And that's it. And he said, we're here to go cycling, and we left. And I got calls from the people appreciating this so much because he didn't go technical speaking about what can be done. He's just giving them a sign of agility and willingness to change on what innovation needs. And that's all what they needed to hear. It's that we're willing to change things. And to that point, at the Dubai Future Foundation, we have a vertical that has an initiative called the Regulations Lab. And the Regulations Lab speaks directly to the cabinet of the UAE and is overseen by the Dubai Future Foundation. Its role is to amend regulation in favor of innovation. So if a blockchain solution comes in for fintech transactions, and if our financial authorities have regulations that do not complement this innovation, we need to have a discussion and change innovation. And they're completely supportive, whether it's DIFC or other financial, or the DFSA or many other supporting entities. We have a dialogue, and we push a new regulation through the Reg Lab to be submitted to the cabinet, where at the cabinet a temporary license will be awarded to test that idea, and then the long term is to get a full-time permanent solution. So for example, if 3D printing, and that's another story, 3D printing, obviously emerging technology. When we first did our first 3D printing building, commercial offices right next to Emirates Towers, when we first wanted to set up the building, there wasn't a regulation for us to actually register that building. So we actually registered it as a tent, because there wasn't, because a typical building has specific regulations. But through this entities like a RegLab, new regulations have been created for 3D printing, for blockchain, for robotics. So the point here is absolutely policies are important, and the vehicle for us is regulation labs. We listen out to new regulations and amend them in favor of innovation.
But it's great to hear and to listen to you talk about that agility, and even to listen to, you know, what you talk about His Highness saying things can change, and that openness, I think, to change has always been, you know, very much focus of Dubai, being able to be nimble and to actually move whatever direction, because the world is changing so fast. Talk to me about Dubai's affiliate position, particularly when it comes to the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. This has been very important. Tell me just why it's important.
Great question. Just for the audience, the center has been announced. Time flies. I think it was in Davos. We were in Davos 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it was 2018, and we were honored to have His Highness Sheikh Hamdan there, meet Professor Schwab, to actually attend the signing ceremony, of course, with the presence of His Excellency Mohammed Al-Gargawi, the Minister of Cabinet Affairs and the Managing Director of the Dubai Future Foundation, and a set of ministers as well, who also are on our board of trustees at Dubai Future Foundation. And I think that's one amazing, let's say, attribute of the Dubai Future Foundation, is that we have more than 19 members of board of trustees spanning across director generals and ministers, who really are our muscle when it comes to support and soft power and building relationships. So we cannot appreciate them enough and their efforts and their contribution. But with regards to the center, it was announced on in 2018 in Davos, and it's the whole idea behind it are several things. One is it acted as the indirect value is that it acted as a node when it comes to the World Economic Forum and a network hub to connect with other centers all around the world. And this is a very strong value, if you will, to speak to like-minded people where centers exist all over the world. So that's one. Secondly, is we discuss topics that are relevant to the Fourth Industrial Revolution and that are relevant to our region. So the first three reports we're working on in the center, and the center has its advisory board as well, which has more than 18 members as well, predominantly from the UAE, managing different government entities, and also influential individuals across the globe, and some from the World Economic Forum as well. And the idea is to focus in its first mandate on three topics: machine learning, blockchain, and genome sequencing. And we've started with blockchain, and we've came out with a toolkit out of this based on best practices and studies globally. And we've discussed it with government entities like DP World and other entities to actually test that toolkit, and also in partnership with the Regulation Lab to ensure that blockchain can be deployed in the safest manner. And the beauty of this center is that global validation happens imminently because of the relationship we have with WEF, who are a main driver of the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
No, and it's great to see how, you know, you can actually make sure that it's been rolled out to look at public and private enterprise, you know, particularly adopting, you know, and designing policy and all that. Absolutely essential. Talk to me about the initiative to have 1 million Arabs in terms of being qualified to be able to code. I mean, this is ambitious, but you're driving this too.
Absolutely. Now, the 1 million Arab coders obviously was one of the first initiatives at the Dubai Future Foundation. As we know, coding is the language of the future. Getting enough coders into this ecosystem creates value in so many ways. And the whole idea behind this program is, first of all, it's a tool to get people ready for something that will be relevant to the future. That's one. Secondly, to the innovation ecosystem, there's always a linkage between coders and entrepreneurs. And sometimes you have the skill set of an entrepreneur who's a good leader, he has the right charisma to lead a business, but he lacks maybe the technical skills, and vice versa. So the whole idea was for us to graduate those people and then infuse them with our other programs that are running, the accelerators and the incubators, so that we can create that harmony between technical people and entrepreneurs that can lead businesses and come up with successful startups. So that's the idea of it. What has been mentioned, amazing numbers, north of 800,000 enrollees. The program has rolled out globally as well, with country partnerships, whether with Uzbekistan, who are doing an amazing job. And that's one idea of discussing initiatives with like-minded people that believe in the same vision. We run the program in partnership with Uzbekistan as well. We've done it as well with Jordan. And one of the most touching moments for me personally as well is when we also, I personally went to the refugee camp as well in Za'atari in Jordan. And I visited them there, and we created a direct program for refugees to contribute as well through the coding initiatives. And nothing will make me happier than seeing them actually get infused as well into the market and creating out of their skills businesses. So that's also something that's very special to me and the team at DFF personally. So we look forward to the progress of this program.
And that is so wonderful, because talent is indeed, it's all around us, and sometimes in the most unusual places, that, and again, the most deserving places where you really need to look. So well done on that initiative. I think it's going to be very successful. But talk to me about the Dubai Future Academy. And when we look at the University Entrepreneur Program and all of that, and people look at the great work you're doing, is this exclusively for Emiratis? Who's involved? How can people work with you? Talk to me a little bit about that, because I know there's a lot of people watching out there that are just looking in amazement at the great work that you've done.
Thank you. So to that point, first of all, it's not only for Emiratis, it's a program that supports all. And naturally, when you support all, it complements Emiratis naturally, because they get to rub shoulders and interact. And it's beneficial for everyone once you create that kind of interaction. So you've mentioned two things, Ethne, the academy and the university program. So I'll differentiate in what is the role of each and every one of them. So the academy, if you will, is the third pillar of the Dubai Future Foundation. So we do have the research, we have the content dissemination, then we have the education, and then we have the building the innovation ecosystem through the regulation labs and the accelerators. And lastly, we have the Museum of the Future, which I'm sure we'll tap onto at some point. But with the academy, the whole idea is to educate the audience about the future. If we are going to talk about being agile, being adapted to the future, we need to create an educational mechanism to get our people ready for the future. And this does not mean that they should understand technologies only or the fourth industrial only. It sometimes also means that there should be a mindset and an adaptation switch to embracing the change that's happening, because sometimes people are resistant to change and resistant to change. So we need to ensure that people accept change, because we cannot stay where we are. We need to continuously move forward. We cannot stick to jobs that we understand are inevitably going to be dissolved and replaced by technology. We need to reskill and readapt. So the academy is basically a beacon and an opening for programs. And one of its initiatives is to communicate directly with the Human Resources Department of the government of Dubai to create programs specifically dedicated to government entities, where we can graduate people to make them future ready and aligned to the future, if you will. And that's one stream of it, across other streams that we focus on tapping into the private sector as well and preparing them for the future. That's on the academy side. Now, the university program is a very exciting program for us as well. It was part of the 50th charter announced by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed to transform the universities into entrepreneurial hubs. And the idea behind this is we've realized now through the disruption of technology that successful startups do not necessarily need to wait to graduate for them to become good business people. You look at the likes of Bill Gates, you look at Facebook and the challenges he had at universities and where he has reached with his business. So the idea is you don't need one or the other. You can do both at the same time. So you cannot give up your education for the sake of entrepreneurship, and you do not need to wait till you graduate for you to run your business. We can do both together. And clearly, we've seen that people used to charge this in the past. So the role of this program is to create entrepreneurial hubs, get people and the students to be more curious about business, to start testing their ideas, affordable license for them to start up their businesses and register their companies, and potentially as the value, and also with funding mechanisms through Dubai SME and beyond, to have grant mechanisms to start with, all the way to proper VC financing as they grow, and then funneling them to the ecosystem. So the idea is entrepreneurship ways or falls hand in hand with education. And the idea is also to discuss with the universities that even if those entrepreneurs fail in the business, it's still credit and learning curve for them. And that's the most important attribute. We cannot say that a successful business means that you get credit. It's the learning curve that you've gotten through that process is what gives you credit as an entrepreneur. So that's the program, and it funnels through our acceleration program as well.
Indeed, yes, indeed, the perfect name for it too, the acceleration program. So no standing still, and certainly no looking back with regret on that. It's about, grasping what's there and going for it. I'm getting some questions coming in, which is wonderful, from our audience. And, we've only got about 20 minutes left. So let me start putting some of them to you. We have a question from Kamal Khan. It's here in the UAE from Network International. Are you taking equity in many of the startups in the UAE? Specific question there.
That's a very good question. For now, the answer is no. Potentially in the future, yes, but this is a bit of a technical question, and I'll try to be very brief with my answer. So we will not take typical equity. What we will take, we will complement businesses. So what I mean is, as I'm not sure if the audience have heard, same time last year, in the presence of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, the Dubai Future District has been announced, with the launch of $1 billion dirham fund, which is supposed and planned to boost and catalyze the innovation ecosystem through equity financing, but in a very double bottom line strategy, not focused on IRRs and multiples, but rather a combination of IRR, but more patient capital and strategic impact-driven investment. And the reason I'm saying equity is that, yes, there will be equity, but we'll not be competing with the typical VCs. So the idea is that we have 3 buckets in this fund. One bucket will be to anchor funds in the region. And this will be obviously investment as an LP in a fund, but at the same time, our management of success of that commitment will not only be driven by the IRRs and the multiples of that underlying fund, but rather how much have we raised awareness in an emerging market in the private sector to deploy into that fund as well? Because naturally, when some entity like Dubai Future District or Dubai Future Foundation deploys into a fund, it raises comfort levels for the private sector to also invest, which is a metric of success in an emerging asset class for us. So we look at how much we have improved the raising and the investing in local VCs as a second metric of success. Secondly, we invest directly into startups, but complementing VCs. So what we do is we look at funding gaps. So if we see that there's appetite in Series A financing and there's less of an appetite in angel or vice versa, then we come in to plug that gap to ensure that there's harmony in the growth of a startup and the cycle of growth for the startup happens. We also do matching schemes. If a fund also invests, we also match them. And at the same time, if we see that a fund is raising a specific round for a startup and there's pro rata where we can get in because they're unable to close that round, we come in and we plug that hole. That's obviously IRR and return for us, but at the same time, the KPI is that we've helped the startup to jump into the second round of financing. So this is all equity, but it's equity / impact. I don't want to go into much detail, but to show you it's a balance, it's a double bottom line strategy. And lastly, through this fund, we can also look at a global fund of fund program, but also with a strategic eye that we will cherry pick funds that have synergy through underlying companies, portfolio companies that can grow in the region, and with partnerships at the GP level that we believe can create value as well regionally and globally. So it's all strategic. It's very exciting for us because it's the first of its kind for the region, and I think it can do wonders if it's deployed in the right way.
And as you can imagine, on a live forum like this, you're creating great anticipation out there with people. So not surprisingly, I'm getting a few questions in here in terms of how can people get involved and how can they approach you? I have a question here from Brent Vanderwalt in the Be Change group, also looking at, startup companies in terms of how they can help in different markets and raising capital, but how do we get involved? And another question on a similar note too from Matthew Matthews from Logis Eye, also asking about innovative startups and how does one approach you? What do you want from companies? What are you looking for? How do they just rock up and knock on your door and say, I have a great idea? So give us a feel for what they need to do in advance before they come to you.
Well, the biggest way, my friend, or the easiest way you use technology now is our website, and it has everything that I've explained across all our verticals, explains every mandate, the Reg Lab, the future accelerators. There's also the Dubai Future District website, which focuses on the fund as well. So I recommend looking at that as well. So the Dubai Future Foundation and the Dubai Future District. And obviously more than happy to share contacts, post email offline to ensure that there's also email communications. But obviously there's an email in the website as well. And I'll make sure the team pays close attention to any contacts we receive on email that are relevant to this interview. So if you can kindly mention that maybe on the email, so to ensure that we cover everyone that has been with us here today. Obviously we pay attention to everyone, but it's nice to understand where the source of this request has come from. So definitely looking forward to the points discussed.
Another question I have here, and it comes from Patrick O'Keke, and looking at any programs that might attract innovations from Africa. And I bet there's plenty of people from different countries probably asking themselves the same question right now. What can they do? Is it more just get involved and connect with you guys? And what are you looking for though?
So I think my best advice for innovations from all over the world is to check out our Dubai Future Accelerators program. We are in our 8th cohort at the moment, and the program is 80% global. So I'd say 20% of the program is from the region. So it shows that there's a sign of collaboration and inclusivity, and it's extremely diverse from a continent perspective. So check out the program, and the program launches challenges agnostically through different sectors. So if that sector is relevant to you, please feel free to apply to it, because we have a team that meets all entrepreneurs and startups, and we validate and vet those ideas. And I'll be very frank, Ethne, when we first launched this program, we faced a major challenge in the filtration of the quality of the startups. And the reason being is the startup, it was a 9-week program where we, through the accelerators, we paid for tickets, we paid for accommodation for those entrepreneurs, and to come in to solve a challenge specifically. So let's take an example. Dubai Health Authority launches an AI solution for a diagnostic of disease X. And we get startups coming in with solutions. We vet them. The ones that pass come in, 9 weeks of testing with the government entity. They succeed, they sign an MOU, they get a pilot test, and they get awarded, and then VCs look at them, and we create a successful story. But when you create a value proposition like this, you attract everyone, the good ones and the not so good ones. So you have prominent startups, you have good ideas, but you also have people that come in and set up a company a day after they've heard the news, because the value proposition of coming to Dubai and enjoying Dubai by itself is valuable for them. So you get so many ideas. So my point is there's always a filtration that has to happen due to the attractiveness of the value proposition. So we will do that. So feel free to reach out to us. I'm looking forward to assessing those ideas.
And obviously, I think people need to keep in mind, of course, the quality that Dubai wants, the quality that Dubai intends to launch out there. So a lot of homework to have done in advance before they actually come to you, without a doubt. I think that's very, very valid here. Is Dubai Future Foundation helping startups to sign MOU with government entities? And this is a question from Hamad.
Absolutely. That's clearly the Dubai Future Accelerators program. Don't quote me on the figure, but it's a 3-digit figure when it comes to the amount of MOUs we've signed with government entities to give startups the hope to start the interaction. Now, the key is not the MOU. The key is signing the pilot test right after that. So the MOU is the intent and the understanding, and then it's the signing of the pilot test with the government entities, and then the signing of the larger contract which generates revenue. So we do all that, but it all depends on how well the startup does in its idea and its selling skills to the government entity. But I guarantee you that the teams that we have from the government entities are teams that understand entrepreneurship and understands the risk behind new ideas and are open to that risk, because this is what creates an innovative department out of that government entity.
Now, I know, of course, you said you're open to people from anywhere around the world, and a question that's come in here from the Khaleej Times, Muzaffar Rizvi, talking about, the startup ecosystem in Dubai. Do you expect significant contribution and collaboration with Israeli startups? The door has now opened, and a lot of work going on and tremendous interest coming from Israel.
Well, obviously, we've had, and I cannot explain to you how many discussions I've had with that regard because of the relevancy of my sector at Dubai Future Foundation. Clearly, the numbers in Israel when it comes to percentage ratio of GDP and BC, ratio of GDP in R&D is the highest globally as a ratio. Their keenness on agri-tech, on robotics is huge as well. And the learning curve that they have had through their programs, whether it's the Startup Nation or any other programs that are within the Israeli innovation ecosystem, there's so much knowledge that has been captured over there. And the idea is to create a two-way dialogue, which we have been doing, which is understanding the knowledge and the experience that has been built in Israel to build the innovation ecosystems, because we are heading in a similar track when it comes to the focus on deployment of VC and R&D, and the focus is there. But at the same time, they are very keen as well in understanding the pace of growth in the United Arab Emirates and the transformation that has happened in such a short period of time, and the potential opportunities that can be explored through ideas generated in the UAE, startups incubated from all over the world in the UAE, and their synergies with Israel and how they can grow within Israel as well. So there's a very interesting two-way dialogue, but definitely so much to learn from what has happened there, and definitely we are having many discussions.
A question from Lebanon Consultants here, Hussein Basma, looking at crowdfunding platforms, particularly when it comes to government projects. Crowdfunding, is this something of interest here, or it's happening?
It's inevitable. I think crowdfunding is something that we have to pay attention to across many sectors, across typically on a financial center perspective, but also in supporting new ideas that come at the Dubai Future Foundation, and opening up the opportunity for micro investors to get involved through investments and through supporting the innovation ecosystem, because that's typically what crowdfunding does. You do not need to be an institution to commit your capital to grow a business. There are platforms that can help you contribute, and we are surely exploring it in many sectors, whether it's in fintech, whether it's also on the gaming sector, which, by the way, gaming is a massive sector as well going forward, and we're paying close attention to it and how we can leverage on that. But crowdfunding is an agnostic platform that serves across all sectors that is truly important going forward.
Now, you mentioned earlier the Museum of the Future. And of course, when we think of museums, typically we tend to be looking backward. But of course, in Dubai, we're looking at a Museum of the Future. And for anybody who has not seen the building itself, they need to start to do a quick check on the internet and just look at the magnificence of that. Talk to me a little bit about that and the advantages that it will bring.
Anthony, they don't really need to go to the internet. I can just go back a bit and show them the building. It's right there behind me, if you can see it. But it's not as visible. But we're so looking forward to this building, and you've nailed it with your comment by saying that this is a museum that focuses on the future, and this is the biggest challenge that we have, because if you think about it, great museums, like let's take the Louvre for example, the value of the assets invested in the museum appreciate and value with time. So the owner of the museum, the amount of investment that needs to be done is that major capital investment in the beginning in those assets, and those assets will be self-generating and appreciated more and more as they grow older, which means that the management of this is really to add a few pieces here and there, and your business model will continue to be successful. And this museum behind me is completely the opposite. What's futuristic today is probably not futuristic 3 months from now, which means if I'm carrying the future mandate, I need to ensure that I have a very smart, logistically and financially, let's say, approach to ensure that my content is continuously future relevant, and that there's a way to change it in a very agile way, because what's futuristic today, like I said, is not tomorrow, is not futuristic very soon. So how can we really manage that value proposition? And without stealing the thunder of the opening, which we look forward to in alignment with Expo sometime this year, the idea of this building is that it will be an immersive experience of a far future, which we call more of a dream, where people will get to imagine how the future will look like in different sectors. And I'm not going to reveal what those sectors are. There's also an immersive experience to get into that environment, which I'm not going to reveal as well. Once you go through that experience of the far future, then you come to an area where you're more closer to the near future and the more tangible future. So we want people to get a sense of how the far future looks, and then what the near future looks, which is plus 3 or 5 years from now, so they can actually feel and touch ideas that are closer to our future. So it's a combination. It's an experience that is more than 2 hours. There's a dedicated space also for kids to enjoy their time, while elder children and adults can experience the other side of the museum. So much content, very challenging because the building looks extremely beautiful and unique from the outside. So to match that from the inside is an extreme challenge. But I believe the team has done an amazing job with the push of leadership, and we can't wait for it to be opened. And you're definitely invited to join us if you are in town at that time, and looking forward to inviting the rest of the guests attending here as well.
Oh, indeed. I mean, this is one we definitely wouldn't miss. We've been watching this, week by week, month by month. It's been quite exceptional to actually see the development. And again, for many of the viewers around the world who can't look out your window, definitely worth a look. We only have a few minutes left. And I want to wrap this up also in terms of looking forward to later this year to Expo. Expo has so much going on. We're going to have 6 months where there's a big focus here in Dubai. We are going to carry on, and I'm sure that some of the great minds of the world are going to be coming here. What do you hope for Dubai Future Foundation and the people that you're going to meet and interact with during Expo? What are your expectations?
Well, first of all, I cannot appreciate Expo enough, and the level of effort that's been done with the push of leadership and the team at Expo, led by Her Excellency Reem, who's a dear friend, and I always wish her the best. And she's done such an amazing job with the team. And as we see it, Expo is gradually opening different sites. I haven't had the chance to visit it yet, but definitely looking forward. I've passed by a few times at the construction site. It's such an amazing place, and looking forward to bringing the whole world to Dubai and the UAE at its opening. Obviously, it's a big sign. The theme of Expo is very complementary to what we do at the Dubai Future Foundation. So definitely looking forward to many synergies. There are so many dialogues that we're having with the Expo team across all verticals, linkage with the Museum of the Future, packages potentially for visitors to come here and there. So many dialogues. We cannot not be part of this. The whole UAE is behind Expo, and we definitely are at Dubai Future Foundation.
And of course, when we look to the future, it's big, it's wide, it's that great dynamic sort of uncertainty that's there. I think you look at really as a huge opportunity, and I guess that's the mindset we all need to get.
Absolutely. The biggest variable in the future is the unknown, Ethne. And the further you go, the more the unknown is visible. And that's what we talk about in the future. But again, you need to do your best in assessing it. And you need to do your best in taking those bets and mitigating the risk. And this is what our leaders have taught us. And we need to continue doing this if we want to grow in the way that we have fortunately grown since the formation of the UAE. So we will continue doing that.
Well, thank you so much. And indeed, under your leadership, I know the Dubai Future Foundation will continue to grow and continue to thrive. It's been such a delight to have you here as part of the interview series for the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I know all of the team and the leadership at the Chamber is so grateful to you and so delighted to have with us here His Excellency Khalfan Belhoul, the CEO of Dubai Future Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you for moderating this amazing session. Enjoyed having it with you, and thank you again for Dubai Future Foundation, Dubai Chamber, and stay safe, everyone, and don't forget to get vaccinated. That's my last message.
Indeed. Stay safe. That's the big message that comes here, so we can all thrive together. Once again, thank you so much, and keep an eye on all of the great work that's going on at the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we'll keep you up to date with great interactions throughout the year. So stay tuned. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.